Hello and welcome to today's lesson where we're looking at two-factor theory, also known as Herzberg's theory of motivation. Now, two-factor theory argues that there are two factors an organization can adjust to influence motivation in the workplace. So the theory tries to get to the root of motivation in the workplace. You can leverage this theory to help you get the best performance from your team. Now, the two factors are firstly motivating factors, and the theory says that the presence of motivators or motivating factors can cause employees to work harder, and they are found within the actual job itself. And the second factor is hygiene factors. Now, the absence of hygiene factors will cause employees to work less hard. Now, hygiene factors are not present in the actual job itself, but they surround the job. And the impact of motivating and hygiene factors is summarized in the diagram you can see here. So essentially, the presence of poor hygiene factors decrease an employee's job satisfaction, but by including motivating factors in a job, you can increase employees' job satisfaction. So let's take a look at some examples of both types of factors. Firstly, motivating factors or motivators. So achievement means that a job must give an employee a sense of achievement, and that's going to provide them with a proud feeling of having done something difficult but worthwhile. Recognition means that a job must provide an employee with praise and recognition of their successes, and that recognition should come from their superiors, but also from their peers. Now, the work itself means that a job should be interesting, varied, and provide enough of a challenge to keep employees motivated. Responsibility means that employees should own their work, they should hold themselves responsible for its completion, and they should also not feel as though they're being micromanaged. Now, advancement simply means that promotion opportunities should exist for employees. And finally, growth. The job should give employees the opportunity to learn new skills, and that can obviously happen through on-the-job training or more formal training. So let's take a look at the hygiene factors. So firstly, company policies. So these should be fair and clear to every employee, but they must also be equivalent to those of competitors. Supervision must be fair and appropriate. The employee should be given as much autonomy as is reasonable. And in terms of relationships, there should be no tolerance for bullying or cliques. A healthy, amiable, and appropriate relationship should exist at all levels. So that means between peers, between superiors, and between subordinates. Now, work conditions means that equipment and the general working environment should be safe, fit for purpose, and hygienic. Remuneration or salary means that the pay structure should be fair and reasonable, but it should also be competitive with other organizations within the same industry. Status. Now that means that the organization should maintain the status of all employees within the organization, and performing meaningful work can provide a sense of status to an employee. Now finally, security. It is important that employees feel that their job is secure and that they are not under the constant threat of being laid off. So given that there are just two factors, it means that there are four possible states your team or any given team can find itself in. So the first is high hygiene and high motivation. Now this is the ideal situation and the one which every manager should be striving for. And in this situation, all employees are motivated and they have very few grievances. The next state is high hygiene but low motivation. Now in this situation, employees have few grievances, but at the same time, they're not highly motivated. So an example of this situation is where pay and working conditions are competitive, but maybe the work isn't very interesting. So employees are simply there each week or each month to collect their salary. The third state is low hygiene, but high motivation. Now in this situation, employees are really highly motivated, but they have a lot of grievances, a lot of complaints. So an example of this situation is where the work is, really exciting and interesting, but the pay and conditions are falling behind competitors in the same industry. And finally, we have low hygiene and low motivation. Now, obviously, this is a bad situation for any organization or team to find itself in. And in this situation here, employees aren't motivated and the hygiene factors are not up to scratch at the same time. So that's a pretty poor situation to find yourself in. So how do we use all of this information in a constructive way? Well, there's a two-step process you can use to boost motivation in the workplace. And the first step to enhancing motivation is to ensure that the hygiene factors are not causing dissatisfaction. Now, there's a few steps you can take to do this. You could rectify petty and bureaucratic company policies. You could ensure that each team member feels supported without feeling micromanaged. You could also ensure that within your team, the day-to-day working culture is supportive. There's no bullying, no cliques. And you could ensure that salaries are competitive both within the industry and that there's no major salary disparities within your team. Now, the second step, once you've taken care of the hygiene stressors, is to boost job satisfaction. And we can do this by improving the actual content of each member of the team's job. Now, three techniques which are common are firstly job enrichment. So this means enriching a team member's job by giving them more challenging or more complex tasks to perform. Now, these more complex tasks should make the job more interesting for them. The second technique we can use to boost job satisfaction is job enlargement. Now, this means giving a team member a greater variety of tasks to perform. And, that variety can help to make a job more interesting as well. But one thing to be aware of is that with job enlargement, the variety of tasks is increased, but not the difficulty of the tasks. If we did increase the difficulty, then that would actually be job enrichment. And the third thing you can try to boost job satisfaction is employee empowerment. And this means delegating increasing responsibility to each team member. And that can be done by slowly over time increasing the amount of responsibility you delegate. So perhaps you start by asking someone to simply investigate an issue, but later you might ask them to investigate the issue and propose a recommendation. And later still, you might ask them to investigate the issue and then solve it unless you say otherwise. So in summary, Herzberg's motivation theory model, or two-factor theory, provides two factors that affect motivation in the workplace. Now, these factors are hygiene factors and motivating factors. Hygiene factors will cause an employee to work less if they're not present, and motivating factors will encourage an employee to work harder if they are present. Now, to use the model within your team, start by getting any hygiene issues resolved. And then once you've done this, you can boost motivation by putting in place as many motivating factors as is practical. So that's it for today's lesson. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.